meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We want to welcome Jackie and her team from the UNL Extension Office, and they're going to help us to develop children's and youth's love for STEAM through imagination guides that they have created. And this workshop will provide you with book recommendations, guided questions, and expanded learning resources that will help you to support literacy development, enhance your relationships, and make a connection with your patrons, especially those small little ones. And the resources that they are providing are engaging learning opportunities that will spark an interest in not only STEAM concepts, but also 4-H. And they follow this year's summer reading theme of Oceans of Possibilities. So Jackie, go ahead and take it away.
This is what I get.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Autumn, for inviting us to be a part of your kind of presentation here today. We love sharing about Nebraska's 4-H Reading Connections. It's a program that we're really proud of. And you gave a great introduction, and you're going to discover throughout the afternoon that it's kind of twofold. So we have some really great resources for early childhood. And then we also have really great resources for 4-H youth, thinking more of that kindergarten through sixth grade. So what we'll do this afternoon is we are going to celebrate some of our successes from the past year, and then we'll go ahead and we'll roll out all the new content that's available to all of you. So I know that some of you may be familiar with Nebraska Extension and different members of our team, but I want to take just a minute to reintroduce ourselves or to introduce ourselves to those of you who we've never met. So I am Jackie Stefan. I'm an early childhood educator, and I've been working with the 4-H Reading Connections program since the very beginning. So we started back in 2014. I love partnering with libraries, and I have many great relationships with libraries in Northeast Nebraska. So my office is in Hartington, Nebraska. I cover the counties of Cedar Knox, Boone, Nance, Antelope, Madison, and then Stanton counties as well. And my programming primarily centers around early childhood and working with adults who care with children birth to age 8. And so with me, I have on Sarah and Jennifer. So I'm going to invite Jennifer to introduce herself.
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. I'm Jennifer Hansen. I'm the extension educator focusing in 4-H and youth development based in Thurston County, so over in Pender. But I also have accountability to Burke County, and I've also been part of this team with Jackie since the very beginning. So I'm excited to share the 4-H side of our program.
You grabbed another computer.
Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Hope you all can hear me okay. My name is Sarah
idea.
Roberts, and I am in Dixon County, Nebraska. So I cover Dixon, Dakota, Wayne, Thurston, and Pierce counties. And I am an early childhood educator, just like Jackie. So she and I work together on a lot of things, including our STEM imagination guides that we'll share with you here in a little bit. My expertise area, I guess, would be science and nature. So you'll see some of that kind of come out as we talk through this. And I'll share a little bit more about that here in a little bit. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. I feel better that it's not me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, I want to do a little bit of background about Nebraska Extension. So our mission statement is really straightforward. You can see it's engaging with Nebraskans wherever they are, connecting them with resources, research, and innovation from the University of Nebraska. So the unique thing about Nebraska Extension is we're the only organization that's able to bring research and expertise from the university to every county or every corner of the state. So we are uniquely local, we're unbiased, we're collaborative, we're responsive. We just want to meet the needs of Nebraskans. And so this works really great to be able to connect with all of you here today. You might wonder, how do we connect with 1.9 million Nebraskans? If you have children or grandchildren that go to daycare or are involved with 4-H, then you've connected with Nebraska Extension before. Or if you have a lawn care service that is from a certified pest applicator and they spray your yard for you, then you've been connected with Nebraska Extension because we have teammates who certify them in pesticide training. Or if you like to eat at restaurants, I know I do, many restaurant employees are trained in food safety, and we have professionals in Nebraska Extension that help train in that serve safe setting. So there's many different ways that people are connected with Nebraska Extension. So we have over 360 extension experts in our system. So some down on campus, and then like I mentioned earlier, in every county in Nebraska as well. And what we do is we divide ourselves into 8 major program or priority areas so that we can best meet the needs of everybody across the state. So everybody kind of has their own specialty. So you're not a jack of all trades. So we have people who specialize in 4-H like Jennifer, early childhood like Sarah and I. We have beef systems, community environment, disaster education, food, nutrition, and health, professionals who focus on rural prosperity, water and innovation cropping systems. So I think I got all 8. I'm not 100% sure. So you can just see that we all have different areas that we focus on. And like both Jennifer and Sarah and myself mentioned, we serve in an accountability region. So we're not only serving the stakeholders in our county, we serve multiple counties as well. So with that being said, from all of the faces that you see on the screen right now, Nebraska Extension wants to tell all of you thank you. We value our library partnerships, and we love all the different ways that the STEM Reading Connection program has been offered in your area. And we look forward to building upon existing partnerships that we have with your libraries. And if we don't have a partnership with you, we hope that maybe that's something that we can get started. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have partnered with Nebraska Extension in your local library for the summer reading program or for maybe some other type of after school program? So if you want to use your reaction button, some of you are raising your hands. If I can see you, that's fine. Great, and I see in the chat box. Thanks, Carrie. Stephanie has as a teacher. Yeah, well, great. So some of you are familiar with us, which was really awesome. Thanks, Spencer. So with that being said, we're going to give you just a little history about our Nebraska 4-H Reading Connections program, and then we're really going to just jump right in. So the reading program was started back in 2014, and when it was started, it was piloted in Northeast Nebraska. And what we did is we really just targeted the libraries in that area and youth grades K through 6th grade. And what happened after 2014 is it quickly spread beyond our little neck of the woods up in Northeast Nebraska, across the state, and then even out of our borders of Nebraska. So as you know, every year we rely really heavily on the Collaborative Summer Library Program theme. And that's how we know what resources we're going to develop to create some new content. So we look at the theme that your library system has, and then we look at a lot of our 4-H curriculum that we have, and we think, how can we mesh those two together? And so I'll show you just a few pictures so that you can see that the program looks different in different locations. And that's totally fine, because we intentionally tried to create a program that didn't have like really strict boundaries or a really strict way on how to implement it. If you look at that top row of pictures, you can see the program's been used in library settings. It's been used in classroom settings. In one of those pictures, we're in a big auditorium. We do small group settings as well. And there's lots of hands-on engagement. We're using technology. We're trying to develop friendships and collaborations. And then of course, we're making sure that we share a love of literacy as well. So we're going to continue to work through libraries and provide 4 no-cost customizable lessons each year that tie directly to the theme. So those are the pictures that you can see on that top row. These lessons can be delivered by all of you, any of your volunteers that you have. You can talk to Nebraska Extension, and if they're available in your area, you could develop a partnership with maybe some individuals who work at the Extension office. If you look at the bottom row of pictures, 2 years ago, we added a second component to the Nebraska 4-H Reading Connections program. And this is the early childhood component. And what it does is it has 8 different STEM imagination guides that also tie directly to the summer reading theme. And so the primary audience for those STEM imagination guides are parents, childcare providers, teachers, or really anyone who loves to read with young children. So it's just really important that you know that since 2014, we have continued to take all of your input and feedback from people who have implemented the program, and we continue to grow and to make it better. So we have 2 sets of resources that all tie directly to the Oceans of Possibilities theme. So we're going to spend the rest of our time today going over the details of the K-6 program and then also the early childhood program as well. Before we look more closely at the 4-H component, does anyone have any questions? You can unmute or you can type in the chat. Okay. Not seeing any, we're going to go ahead and forge forward, and I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer to share about the 4-H Reading Connections resources.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jackie. So just to kind of get everybody back on the same page, some of you may already know this, but this is the general overview of what the 4-H Reading Connections lessons from the K through 6 lens kind of focused on. So as Jackie said, we match our curriculum, our 4-H curriculum with the collaborative summer library program theme. Part of our goal is to spark an interest in reading, also to spark an interest in 4-H, because we have found that some of the youth that come to library have taken the plunge and joined us in 4-H, and even just raising that awareness piece is huge, but also enhancing partnerships, which is definitely where the library system comes in. We have a set of 4 customizable lessons, and that will become very apparent when we walk through the one lesson today. Each lesson comes with book suggestions. They'll have between 1 and 3 hands-on activities that you can use during your time with your youth, or you can break it apart. You can do them as stations, you can do them as a large group. It'll kind of depend on what works best in your library situation. And there's always that physical fitness activity, because we know small people tend to be wiggly, especially in the summer. It's nice, maybe they don't want to sit still. So we will have the opportunity to do some physical fitness activities with those youth to get started. With that, can I have my next slide, Jackie? Okay, so brief overview, because I'm not going to deep dive into all 4 lessons today, because that's a lot of information. But this year we went back to our roots, so to speak, with the 4-H Reading Connections program, and that is back to the 4-H pledge, which is head, heart, hands, and health is the basis of the 4-H pledge for those of you that are familiar with that. So each of our lessons focuses on one of those 4 topics. So in our head lesson, youth are really going to use their head and think like an engineer. They're going to learn the major body parts of a dolphin. They're going to know why it's important for the dolphins to have a functional tail. And then they're going to work in teams and use the engineering design process to solve a real problem. In the heart lesson, we're going to talk about how everyone has their own talents and strengths that make them unique. And then we're going to talk about how an oyster makes a pearl and how each pearl is unique. And then how the layers of a pearl relate to their own strengths that make them who they are. In the hands lesson, which is, I will be honest, this is the lesson I'm most familiar with. This is the lesson that I helped pull together personally. The other ones I kind of know enough to be dangerous with, but this is the one I actually know something about. We're going to talk about what's a watershed, and we're going to talk about our local watersheds and how that connects with the ocean. Because to talk about the ocean in Nebraska, I was struggling with how to make that connection. And then I found a really cool interactive map that I'll probably pull up and show you that's part of the lesson plan that I just love. It's so much fun. What can we do locally in our own backyards to protect our natural resources, especially water and even the ocean? In our health lesson, we're going to explore salt and how salt affects the buoyancy and water density. And there's some fun science experiments the youth will do during that lesson. We'll talk about why we actually do need salt in our diet. But then we'll also talk about what happens if we have too much salt in our body. What happens then? So Jackie, with that, can you go to the next? Thank you. So again, this year, similar to last year when I'm going to put that in the chat before I forget. I knew I was going to do that. Maybe I'll do it in a while. It's not working for me at the moment. The link to download all of our lessons is available via a Qualtrics. You'll fill out a simple Qualtrics basically, so at the end of the summer, we can kind of follow up with you. But this is the cover page. So on this page, it gives you an overview of what our program's goal is, what the lessons are. So these are the components that are in all of these lessons. They're grades K through 6, approximately 60 minutes. You can break that down, you can make it longer, whatever works. There's a STEM careers connection. It's going to relate to one of the 4 H's. There's a learning objectives, there's your material list, there's the continue learning in 4-H, which is a new component we added. There's the resources, there's movement ideas, there's book suggestions, there's a variety of activities. And over on the left-hand side, as you look at that, are all of our team members, along with their emails. And these will be highlighted on each lesson for you as we go through that. So next slide, my friend. Okay, so in the Our Blue Planet lesson, this is the first 2 pages. And basically it talks about the grade level, again, that length, the careers. We talk about conservationist, marine biologist, fisherman, hydrologist. The lesson author is going to be the first name listed. So for this lesson, yeah, thank you, Jackie, I am listed first. So a couple of lessons were co-written, both of their names are going to be there. So if you have questions specific to the Our Blue Planet lesson, contact me. I can be a lot of help. If you contact Chandra or Tiffany or Sonia or Ann or Jen, they'll be helpful, but they may not be as familiar with what we were trying to do as what I will. So it kind of gives you a little bit more direction on who to go to. And just like you, all of us are busy during the summer as well. So you never know whether you're going to catch us or not. But then it just kind of outlines what's going to happen. We talk about the H, and then we talk about the 4-H pledge. And that's one of the things we kind of wanted to focus on a little bit. Just because all 4 H's will show up in all 4 lessons. We're just focusing on one lesson over the others. So, or one of those H's over the others in each one. Your learning objectives are going to be outlined. The supply list is going to be listed for each activity. So that's to kind of help you to understand what's going on. So for this, we have the physical activity, which is a dancing water activity. Basically, you have them dance like water based on the music they're listening to. So self-expression. You could easily do that inside. You could take that outside. That's one that maybe you just need them to move in the middle. Like there's a lot of easy ways to do that. The next lesson is one called Our World, which we've used a lot in the 4-H realm. And basically you use Play-Doh primarily because it can be reused again. You can also do this with food items, although I don't recommend marshmallows, like the big marshmallows. That doesn't work real well. But basically what you have the youth do is you go through and you have them cut their ball of Play-Doh into the different parts of the world. So the first time they cut it in 3/4. And 3/4 of the world is water. And so then you talk about how 1/4 of the world is used for food production, and the lesson plan lays it all out very, very well. In the watershed lesson, this is a fun one too. And if you can go outside with this one, sometimes that's maybe good. So in this one, you give them a plain piece of paper, washable markers, and then spray bottles of water. Okay. And what they're going to do is they're going to basically, I can't remember the instructions exactly, but color different colors on their paper and like make ridges for like mountain ranges and valleys. And then they color those like mountain ranges with a color, one of those red marker, like if it's a red marker, let's say. Then when they spray it, that runs, and it talks about the runoff in the drainage area. And so going outside sometimes isn't bad, just because small children in squirt bottles, even though it's a squirt bottle, like sometimes they get a little excited, right? Like they're not soaking their paper. It's just a gentle rain shower is kind of what I try to remind them of when I do it, because they tend to get a little excitable with that one and get a little nuts on us with that. And this lesson is the one I was looking for. Jackie, can you stop sharing for just a minute? Because I want to share something. So in that watershed lesson, there is what do I call it? There is a watershed map that you can visit with your students. Now I gotta find the right screen. Yeah, I need to. So, whoops, now you're in my email. You don't need my email. You need this one. Okay. So what I love about this is applicable across the United States. Okay. So you can click wherever you want on this map. So I'm going to just click here. And then you can zoom in using your mouse. And I think some of you were in like the Grand Island area. So you can zoom in and see your local watershed. And back at the beginning, it talks about what does the yellow mean versus the purple and all of that. But if I move up here to, let's say, St. Paul and over here, like it's just so much fun because you can really deep dive into your local area, which I think is super cool because sometimes we do these activities and we talk about Nebraska and where does Nebraska water go? Okay, we know that, but where specifically does water, if I live at Hastings, where does my watershed go? Or if I live over here at North Platte, like where does it go? So it's kind of a fun interactive map that you can really have the youth like deep dive into. I mean, you can get pretty close up of this. So I think it's kind of a fun activity, especially for those older youth that maybe aren't as excited about spraying water on a piece of paper that they colored on. Give them this and let them do some research about watersheds because I had a lot of fun playing with it. In fact, you know, maybe you're originally from South Dakota. You can do the same thing with South Dakota. Like you can go anywhere in the United States. They've pretty much done this. So I think that's kind of a really fun, interactive map. Doesn't look like I get to go to Canada, but I mean, we talk about the Missouri River system and where that all starts. So anyway, that is one I think is really cool. So Jackie, if you will go back to my slides, please.
Sounds good. And Jennifer, that website is shared in the lesson plan, right?
It is in the lesson plan under Activity 2, Watershed. Or you can print maps. I mean, those of you that like to print things, that's fine. Or talk to your local NRCS office, your Nebraska Conservation and Resource Service office locally. Each county, I think each county has one. Pretty sure each county does. But they may have resources and sometimes they have conservation officers that need to come out and do like programming. So there could be another potential partnership for you there. In the water pollution demonstration lesson, which would be the third activity in this one, basically you set them up and you give them a watershed in a tub, like a tote. I envision using a very large tote when I do this one. And it kind of talks about that use a storage container, put clean water in it, and then like all the things. And then you give them like a story of I mow my lawn and my lawn clippings I blow into the street. And like, how does that all affect? So you start with this clean, beautiful world. And what happens if I do one little thing and my neighbor does a little thing and the next person does a little thing, how does that all work? So that's kind of how that lesson lays out. Then there's going to be the preparation. And this is where I fall down every time I do these lessons. I don't read the entire lesson 100%. I skim it, right? And then I start doing it and I'm like, oh, I didn't understand it. So really read the whole thing. Take the 5 to 10 minutes to actually read the entire lesson you think you want to do. This is my number one thing I do wrong all the time is I skim it because I'm in a hurry, right? Preview your book recommendations, which we're actually going to share those today. So that can kind of help you guys. I know as you do your summer order, gather your supplies, prepare your activities. Jackie, next one. And then there's the continued learning. So maybe you have youth that come to your program that you know are in 4-H. You can talk about it that if they enjoy these lessons on water, they might consider checking out these projects. And it lists them. It also talks about the resources that we used. So, and where they came from. This water pollution demonstration is a National Ag in the Classroom lesson, and build your own watershed. That was another one that I thought would be a good resource. So I kept it in there for you. But then the next page in every lesson after we get through the basics is going to be the step-by-step, how do I do this lesson? So basically it is our intent when we compile these lessons that you can pick this up and with minimal prep, meaning I've read it and I have the supplies, you should be able to teach it. Now, granted, we all know the more familiar we are with things, the easier it is, but you can basically pick up and go as long as you have your supplies ready. So we talk about the physical fitness one in here. And then yeah, you can just do all sorts of fun things. You can have them move like water moves, and it kind of talks through that. Then the book suggestions are going to be listed on the front on the first page, and don't worry about jotting these down yet. We'll come back to them. But these are just the ones that I felt like would fit. And Jackie had shared the big, like 100 and some page bind or reference guide you all received as part of this collaborative summer reading stuff. She shared that with me. So these were books that were listed in there. I was hopeful that by doing that, it may make it easier for our local libraries to have the books available. Or at least that's how I chose to do mine. I can't speak for everyone that wrote a lesson. Next slide there, Jackie. And then there is vocabulary words, because some of these words, these youth, especially kindergartners, are not going to be familiar with. What's a watershed? In here, we also talk about an estuary. What is an estuary? Like, what is that, right? Like, I mean, I kind of know, but how do you explain that to a 7-year-old? So we try to put in vocabulary words they might not be familiar with. And then we give you the introduction, which again talks about the objectives. Opening questions you can start asking them. Do you know how much of the earth is water? What's a watershed? What do all rivers eventually flow into? Does your local watershed have any effect on the ocean? And then basically it's scripted if you want it to be scripted. Like, you can read this to them, have them answer, and it's very scripted if you want it that way. For those of you that's your preferred method of delivery. And then we go into step-by-step instructions for each of the activities in each lesson. So the Our World one is listed here. Jackie, can I go to my next slide? Because I think I skipped some activities because I didn't want to spend time on all of the things, but each activity, at least that I wrote, has then the reflection questions. So if you only have time to do the Our World activity or the watershed activity or the pollution one, there's some reflection questions that kind of go with those. So you don't have to do all of the activities if it doesn't work in your setting, in your time frame, whatever that is. And then I skipped from page 7 to 11. Just know that I skipped, there's missing pages because I wasn't going to put everything on the screen. So I felt like that's overwhelming. But we talk about reflecting and applying. So the overall wrap-up questions: how much of the earth is water? It goes back to those opening questions. We're making sure maybe they learned something. And then some of this evaluation data is kind of fun to find out. And so if you can do this with them, we do thumbs up, thumbs down, stand up, sit down, however you want to do that, just to ask those simple questions and record that data. And then you can share that with your local extension office if you would. And then of course you can always post things to that hashtag there at the bottom. And Jackie, can you go to the next one? I think that's the book one. Okay. So here are the suggested books for all 4 lessons. I just screen grabbed these yesterday. So for the head lesson, we're really focusing on Winter's Tale and how one little dolphin learned how to swim again. And so they pulled this lesson together, and then Winter died. It was a very sad day for our team because that happened about the time we were finalizing these. But these are the 2 books that they recommend for that lesson. In the Heart lesson about pearls, The Oyster Secret and How the Oyster Saved the Bay are the books. And oops, and I must have missed one. Oh, and The Rooster and the Pearl, the Aesop fable. There's not a cover grab. That's just like, where did it go? And then for Blue Earth, Pout Fish Clean Up the Ocean, Captain Grain and the Plastic Scene, The Ocean in Your Bathtub, and We Are Water Protectors. And then for Our Hands Health, the salt lesson, Captain Kidd's Crew experimenting with sinking and floating in the science lab. And then Who Sank the Boat and What Floats in a Moat. So those are just book suggestions. We know you guys have tons of book suggestions. And I know when I partner with my local library, a lot of times it's like, well, I don't have the book you recommended, but I think this will work. Most of us, if we're partnering with you, we trust your judgment. You guys are the experts when it comes to the books. You're the librarians. You know what books you have on hand. And you know what books maybe will fit with the theme. So by all means, these are suggestions, not requirements to do these lessons. Because there's a lot of cool things you guys can do with books you have in your library. And then, is that my last slide, Jackie? I think it might be. But can I pause here and ask if there's any questions about the 4-H side of this before we let Sarah and Jackie go onto their STEM Imagination guides? And these will get emailed. I will get the link posted in the chat box, but then it's on my to-do list for the next 2 weeks is what I'm going to tell you, to send out an email to all the library systems across the state with the link to download the resources. And you can get to them from what Sarah and Jackie are going to talk about later, but I know sometimes having that direct link is easier than going to a website and having to remember where they told me to click, although it's very self-explanatory on their website. So their website's pretty cool, but those resources will be coming and we'll see. Maybe I'll get it done during our time together. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Jackie then.
Awesome. Thanks, Jennifer. You know, I'm really excited just because we were able to do an in-person training. We were in Blair actually, and the one with the dolphin tail is really fun. So it's really all about that design engineering process, and where you bring pipe cleaners and hangers and lots of different supplies, and they're trying to make their fin. And so that is a really awesome project to see. It was fun to do with adults, and so we know that it's fun to do it with young children as well. And I think about the one, Jennifer, when you're talking about salt, and it was really eye-opening to me when we did that as an in-person library presentation, thinking about all the salt that we consume in some of our meals. And so then they were actually putting the salt into a cup and putting an egg in and finding out, seeing which ones made the egg float. And so that was really eye-opening to me to think about what is my salt intake. So I'm really excited to be able to use these lessons with our local libraries as well. So thanks, Jennifer.
Yep. And to just go on with that, because we didn't touch much on the Pearl lesson. That lesson is really a personal lesson. Like the youth are going to get out of it what they put into it. But basically we ask them to think about like, what are their strengths, or like, what are things they enjoy doing, or what do people say about you? Are you a good listener? Are you a good helper? And just building all of those layers make you into the person you are. And so it's really, I'm going to call it our warm and fuzzy lesson. Like it's not as STEM based, if you will, just because it's a little more personal in that personal development side. But I also think sometimes our youth need to like stop and think about the things that they do, that they get told of, oh, you're good at picking up, how that is actually like one of their strengths and one of their things that makes them special and makes them unique. But I do think that's kind of a fun activity, and would be a fun activity to do intergenerationally if you do anything like that in your local libraries with parents and their young people or grandparents, or even just caring adults that would want to be part of that. I think that lesson has a lot of applications across age groups. Like it's even fun to do with adults. So I just had to plug that one too.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, so we're going to switch gears and we're going to switch to our STEM Imagination guides. And I had said that we just started this about 2 years ago. So back in 2020, what we realized as our program was growing was that there was a pretty big audience of kiddos that we were missing. So we know that not everyone is able to come to the library for the traditional, maybe summer reading program. They might not be able to come because of distance. And we did discover that many aren't able to come because they are in some form of a childcare setting, and it's not close enough where they're able to actually walk to the library. And so that's where this program was kind of developed. So we specifically designed the STEM Imagination guides for early childhood professionals, for parents, for grandparents, for all of you librarians, and maybe even high schoolers who are doing some babysitting during the summer, really anyone who loves young children and wants to engage with them and to read with them. And so what I do want to point out is, so you can see the 3 themes that we have guides for. So in a little bit, when we go out to our website to find out where all these resources are stored, you're going to discover that our website is really like a big vault. A collection of many different guides and many different resources for you and for anyone who wants to work with young children. Just because this year's theme is Oceans of Possibilities, we're going to feature that on our main website. But if we go to a page behind or do another click, we're going to be able to go and get last year's resources on animals and animal habitats. Or we're able to click another button and go back and get our resources that are on fairy tales, because we know we don't only have to read about oceans during the summer of 2022, and we're not only going to read about fairy tales during the summer of 2020. So each year there's going to be 8 new guides who are that are added to that vault. And so I do want to kind of look at this past year and then show you what it looked like, and then we'll move forward to see what these resources look like this year. So this is just a graphic that highlights our Tales of Tales STEM Imagination Guide. So you can see that over 1,800 youth were reached with these guides, and they were actually downloaded and used in over 21 states. As I mentioned, they were all about habitat. So over on the right-hand side, there's just a grid that shows you which guides were the most popular. And to me, it doesn't surprise me that the farm habitat, living here in Nebraska, was the one that was downloaded and used the most. And so the book that went or still goes with the farm habitat is The Little Red Barn, which is a really popular book for children who are a very young age. And you can see the different organizations that use them. We had libraries, we had childcare settings, we had extension offices, we had preschools, YMCAs, 4-H clubs who use them, public schools who use them. So they were used in a variety of different settings. Probably the main feedback that we got was everyone loved kind of the simplicity of the guides. So you'll see here in a little bit that there's a variety of different kind of extended learning activities that go along with the book. But most of those are low cost or no cost, things that you have around, because our intent for early childhood professionals and parents and librarians was not to make something so complicated that they needed to run to their local dollar store or Walmart to gather a bunch of supplies. We wanted to really have that opportunity to be able to sit down, enjoy a story with a young child, and then to have some fun and extend that learning as well. So you'll see the simplicity that comes along with these guides. Here's just a couple of pictures. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, you can see a kit. So what we were able to do last summer through some grant funds is we were able to provide kits to some early childhood providers in our area. And so they were able to take a deep dive into all of the guides, and then they implemented them in their child care setting. It was a part of their training. So we did a pre-training and then they implemented, and then we came back and we shared, and they shared how the process went in their setting as well. If you look right below that picture, that's Peggy Lighting from the Randolph Library. And so she chose to use the guides as a part of her story time. So she picked her favorite guides, and then that helped her plan some of her story time sessions as well. If you go over to the bottom right-hand corner, that is a provider in the Norfolk area, and she was able to even use these guides with the infants that she cares for. And what I love about that, and I think that all of us are probably on the same page, and we know it's important to read early and read often. And so that's what she was doing with them. And there were some different sensory activities that she engaged her infants in as well. The two other pictures just make me smile. That middle one is just to show you that we want to make sure that we have play and nature included in all of our STEM imagination guides. So some of this is going to be dirty, but we know that kids love to get dirty, and they are able to learn and explore through their senses. The little guy in the top right-hand corner, he is from the Wayne area, and that particular child care provider, she was reading about the ocean habitat and had that piranha fish. And so it was neat to see and hear from her experiences and from her travel, how she used her experiences to enhance the STEM imagination guide that she had as well. And so that picture and his little face just makes me smile. Like the guides that Jennifer talked about, the lesson plans, ours are all customizable. And that's where we take all the resources that you may have to enhance and to meet the needs of your audience. If you look at these pictures, you can just see, as was reported on that kind of fact sheet, that the resources were used in home child care settings, This is a center setting. This is also a home child care setting. This was about a habitat, and they were learning how to make an animal carrier. And I really love the teamwork that went into this project because they developed it as a team. And then that particular child care provider in the Crofton area, she said they hung that animal carrier right in their entryway. And so every day when parents dropped off, it was oftentimes a conversation piece, and it reminded them of the story, Not Norman, an Ordinary Goldfish. The two pictures right here in the middle and in the top right-hand corner, those are specific to a camp setting that we did. So Sarah, she'll be talking here in just a little bit, but she's everything animals, everything outdoor, everything nature, and she has some pretty crazy friends that she keeps in her office. And since last year's theme was Tales of Tales, she brought animal ambassadors to our camp as we were using our STEM Imagination Guide. So in the middle, her bearded dragon is Smog, and Smog was a big hit. So everyone enjoyed kind of touching him and learning about him. And then my favorite picture is that one up in the top right-hand corner. There's actually a tarantula that she keeps in her office. And she was able to bring that as well. It has a name, but Sarah, I don't remember the name of your tarantula. Sorry.
Aragog.
Aragog, that's right. But what I love about that is just the experience for the young children to learn about different animals. And I look at the little girl in the red shirt, you know, she's super curious, but you can see the expression and maybe a little bit of hesitation on her face as well. So why I wanted to share a lot of these pictures was just to show you how these guides have been used in a variety of different ways. And this next video that I'm going to show you is one that's actually in a home child care setting. And so the book that they shared was I Don't Want to Be a Frog. So we were learning about the pond habitat, but this is a good demonstration of what the STEM connection activities look like. And it shows you how simple but effective they are. So hopefully I need to make sure I'm sharing with sound. So give me a sign if it doesn't play.
Okay, we have all of our frogs in the pond. We're gonna see which ones we can catch with our balloons. Yeah. Are you ready? Yes. Okay, rub the balloons on your head. Yes. You rub the balloons. Can you rub the balloons on your head? Okay. Rub them. Okay, see which frogs we can catch.
Wait, it's picking up one.
Oh, yeah.
Green. Yeah, play.
Which ones are we catching?
The dark green ones.
The dark green ones? Did anybody catch a medium green one?
Me.
You did?
No.
How about a light green one? Anybody catch the light green ones?
This one ran at it. Oh, no.
There we go. All right, we're going to talk about what just happened. We're going to talk about static electricity.
Yay!
All right, good job, guys.
And so that's just fun to show how they've had that experience of reading the book. With this one, it was all about static electricity, and they actually have 3 different types of paper frogs. So with tissue paper, with construction paper, and with regular copy paper. So they were able to do some predictions, which frogs they thought were going to jump into their pond first. The other beautiful thing I think about that setting is, although that's in a home child care setting, it reminds me a lot of libraries as well, just because we know we have a variety of ages that come. Brothers and sisters come to the programs, and I love how we're able to see some of the young toddlers with the preschool age too. And so it's just as effective with all ages, and everyone can be engaged. So that's just a fun way just to show you how it's been used in other places. So what I'm going to do is we are going to kind of dig a little bit deeper into why we have such a strong connection to STEM and to nature. So I'll pass it over to Sarah.
All right. Well, thanks for letting us come again. So like I said before, I am I don't want to say I'm an expert, but I am super interested in STEM and nature, and I have a lot of background in informal education. Before coming to Extension, I worked for Game and Parks, and then before that, I worked for the Omaha Zoo as well as for the Montgomery Zoo in Alabama, where I'm from. So I have a lot of interest in all of these areas, and really with the ocean part of it too. Since I grew up in Alabama, I was very close to the ocean, and actually I just came back from there last week. Unfortunately, I only got to go to the beach once because it was raining, but that's okay. So there's a lot of connections that I have with our curriculum this year. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about that a little bit. So with that, the first kind of, I guess, before I start on this one, whenever we talked about, what we wanted to include in our lessons, including the STEM connection activity, as well as kind of that nature piece, we kind of thought a little bit about what that actually means. And so there's some other kind of nature programs that I teach for providers. And a couple of things that I do is to talk about why nature is important and how nature and STEM kind of fit together with each other and really make kind of a great collaboration, really, because nature is STEM and STEM includes nature. So the first thing that we can talk about is that nature and STEM are for all ages. And so even though our guides are kind of geared towards that preschool age and then, a little bit younger and a little bit older, we really want this stuff to be available for anyone because that is what it is. And so if you look at the pictures on this page, the one in the top left corner, so those are adults, and that's a class I was teaching about nature. And they're actually out doing an activity called Nature Bracelets. And this one is an activity that is super easy, it's super cheap. Most of the time I use just like off-brand duct tape, and you can put the sticky side out. So you kind of cut it like a bracelet and put the sticky side out. And then children can go out and collect nature items to put on their bracelet. And then once they come back in, you can either let them wear it, or another thing they do is they can cut it off, glue it or tape it down on a piece of cardstock, and they can kind of label or categorize the things that they collected. In fact, I did this activity when I worked at the state park, and one of the kids collected garbage. And I was like, okay, that's not really what I wanted you to do, but that's okay. And he said, well, I'm doing a non-nature one or something. I don't know, he had like a creative name for it. So there's a lot of ways that you can do that, because it was kind of interesting to see the things that he picked up that were in nature that weren't supposed to be there. So you can kind of do it in a lot of different ways. Then the picture kind of right below that one is of an infant, and that is actually my son. He's 3 now, so this is a little bit ago. And it's just an activity during block play. And so we had an activity at State Fair that revolved around different blocks and how children play with blocks. So it's available for infants. And, you think about blocks too, is there's older kids that love playing with blocks, even kids that play with Legos. So even there's adults that play with Legos. You see these adults that make these huge models of things, that's still play, and that's still considered blocks. So, even though there's infants playing with this too, there's also a wide range of ages that also do that. So then the one right kind of above that one, this is a group of first graders, and they are actually learning about pollinators. And so the plate there with the yellow, that is a flower that they had the chance to dissect. So we had them pull the petals apart, and they could see, we talked about the different parts of a flower and what they do. And then in the little vial that they're looking at is actually a honeybee. So I'm super lucky that I work with someone who maintains our honeybee colony that we have at my office. So she went out there and got me a little honeybee that I could put in there. And so I could actually show the kids, the baskets that honeybees have on their legs, and that's where they collect all the pollen. And then that relationship that pollinators have with the environment. So that was kind of a cool experience for them. Then the one on the bottom is another group of adults. And this is actually a nature activity where you can just go out and be. I think as adults, we really struggle with that because we're always on the go. We're always trying to do something. We always, your kids have activities, or your family has events, or church, work, all these different things. So it's really great to just go outside, take a piece of paper, and just sit. Take 5 minutes, even if that's all you have. Just sit out there, listen to the sounds that you hear, notice the things that you see. And in this particular one, you kind of have the freedom to do anything. You can either draw pictures of things that you see. You can write a poem if that's your thing. You can write down words that describe things. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of incorporate nature into your program. And like I said before, even though this is with adults, you can still do this with kids. They may not be able to write or draw as well, but it's still a really great opportunity to just bring them outside and help them to use their 5 senses to explore their environment. So that's kind of the age range that we're dealing with here, is basically birth through, 100. All right. The second component of this is that nature and STEM are available. And one thing I want to note about this, and Jackie kind of touched on this in our introduction a little bit ago, is that we wanted to make sure that these guides are available, but it also has supplies that are available. So we didn't want to put things on there that you don't have already or that you don't have easy access to. And so that's what Nature and STEM is all about too, is that it doesn't include all these fancy tools. I mean, it can, okay, don't get me wrong. You can have a lot of expensive things to use with STEM and with nature, but you don't have to in order to experience it or learn from it. And so the pictures over here kind of show a few different examples of that. So the one in the top left, this is actually at a child care center in Boulder, Colorado. And this is one of their activities that they were doing. So they did what's called a provocation, which means you're kind of posing a question to your audience, whether that be children or adults, and it's kind of like inviting them into the activity. So this one in particular was about trash. And so they were talking about conservation and recycling and all these different things. And so what they wanted to do is provide a sorting activity for children. So you can see that one of the baskets has a sign that says recycling, one says compost, and then one says trash. And so all they have is a basket of trash. I'm almost positive that all of us have access to garbage. We might have to clean it up a little bit before we let kids play with it, but old wrappers and stuff like that, this is a really great opportunity to just say, all right, let's sort this out and then talk about, the implications of what this plastic has on the environment, or how could we make this more of a compost pile instead of a trash pile. So there's all different conversations that you can have within that one little activity. The one right below that one is also at the school there in Boulder. And this one is actually an infant toddler outdoor space. And what I love about this picture, and it's really small, so you might not be able to see it as well, but you can kind of see all the different colors that they have out there. So sort of on the I guess the floor, if you want to call it that, there's 4 different, yep, right there. Those are my favorite because those are shower mats. So all they did was go out to dollar store, Walmart, Target, wherever, and bought different textures and different colors of shower mats. And I actually bought some here this past week because I wanted to have them in my collection to be able to show people. And they're pretty cheap, and there's all kinds of different designs and textures and colors and all these different things. So it's something that can be easily obtained, but also has a really good impact on infants and toddlers, because where are they? They're down on the ground. And so they have that opportunity to use their 5 senses to explore. There's also like a tire with cellophane in it that makes a lot of noise. Kind of over on the side, there's some PVC pipes, and they've propped them up a little bit so that way it makes kind of a ramp. So there's all these different ways that you can be creative with things that you already probably have either around your setting, around your home, or that you can see if anybody else has access to them that you could borrow. The one right above that is some nature items that have been brought inside. And so living in Nebraska, that our weather is crazy. It can be -20 one day and 70 the next. We don't know. So one of the things I encourage our providers to do is to bring nature inside. So, we as adults sometimes don't want to go out if it's really cold. Kids don't really care as much, but it's usually us that are like, I don't want to do that. So we can bring a lot of these items indoors so that way they can explore them. So, even if they're not going outside every single day, they're still exposed to that and able to do some exploring with those items. The last picture here, this is my son again. Sorry, but as an extension kid, you're kind of at the mercy of the mom, because I get to take lots of pictures and share. So this is actually, we went out to my grandparents' cabin. Doesn't really matter about that, but we were near some water. And so we got to go out and just kind of be out there. And when I took this picture, he had been throwing rocks into the water. This was just a big kind of pond out there. So I didn't have any toys. I didn't have any materials, nothing out there with us. And he probably sat there for a good 30 minutes before I said, okay, we need to go. Just throwing rocks and watching the ripples come out of each rock, or listening to the noise that it made, or seeing if other fish were out there or something like that. So, think about that when you're utilizing STEM in nature, is what materials do I need, or what materials don't I need? Can I just go out and have them explore on their own? You can turn it to the next one. There we go. Okay. The third component of this is that it's interesting. So even though I have a lot of people sometimes tell me that they don't like science, They don't like math. They don't know a lot about it. They're uncomfortable teaching it. But really the things that you're doing that are interesting to you probably have a STEM or nature component to it already. So, I mean, you think about what you like to do in your free time. A lot of times people like to go for walks. They like to ride their bike. They like to cook. So cooking I feel like is a misunderstood thing, because that is such a scientific, mathematical activity and a technology and engineering, because you're building things sometimes. You're using lots of different technology. I know I was just making cookies earlier today, and I was using a stand mixer. So that's some technology there. I had to measure out things. So that's math. When I'm mixing things and watching everything kind of make that final product, that is part of science. And so there's all kinds of different things that go into cooking. So that's something that interests me. So that, think about that as you're doing different things around the house, either in your off time or even at work too. So as far as this being interesting, kids and adults are gravitate naturally towards the thing that they want to do. So in this case, this top left corner, this is another group of after school kids. I think they were in first grade as well. And the activity that we were doing was color mixing. So with STEM and nature, a lot of times when we're doing an activity with children, we might have an end result that we want all of them to get to. So for instance, the activity here was to try to make 24 different colors with only primary colors. So they had red, yellow, and blue, and they had to make 24 different colors just using those 3 colors. So they all had that end goal of finding 24 colors, but the way that they got to that end goal might have been different for all of them. So in this case, this little girl said she loved the color purple. And I have a video of it somewhere when she's talking about it, but she wanted to make all different shades of purple. You can see she has some other colors in there, but in her discovery of trying to get to purple, she made a lot of other different colors. So that was what was interesting to her. She made it her own by saying, okay, I love purple, so I just want to do all purple. That's fine. You're still doing 24 different colors. I didn't say, no, you need to do some blue, you need to do some yellow, like whatever. It was her experiments and kind of her interests put into that activity. The other 3 pictures, again, all my sons, sorry about that. But these are just some of the things that we did as an infant and then even as a toddler here. So children love water, they love sticks, they love leaves. It doesn't really matter what age they are, they love to just play with those things. So in the one where he's kind of holding a leaf right there, I used to take him outside in my front yard a lot while I was on maternity leave. And luckily it was nice out. And so there was like leaves outside, and it's really great when they're still alive, but they're not quite, green, but they're crunchy. They're not dead, but they're not alive. They're kind of in that middle stage after they've fallen from the tree, but they have this nice crunch and they don't make a mess everywhere. But it was kind of interesting to just watch him as an infant, just try to crunch this leaf and then like shake it because he didn't know what it was. So just that discovery process is interesting. And they are led by those interests to be able to discover these different things. All right, and the last one. Okay, so this is the 4th component. Now there's all kinds of different things you can talk about with STEM and nature, but these are just some of the things that we wanted to touch on. So STEM and nature is timeless. So no matter what jobs look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the skills that you're learning through exploring STEM and through exploring nature are all things that you're going to be able to use throughout your entire life. Like I said, regardless of what job that you have. So communication skills are learned through STEM and through, working with nature, problem solving skills, observation skills. So all those kind of life skills that you're learning by doing all these activities and being exposed to this stuff are things that you'll always use. So even if you have, we don't know what jobs are going to exist in the next 10, 20 years. I mean, it's evolving in front of our eyes. It's kind of crazy to see. But how can we help children to develop skills that they will still be able to use? They may not, I always remember some of the things I did in high school, like with calculus and stuff like that. And even that, I could just get online and Google it, or, use a calculator or ask Siri or something like that and get the answer like that. So the actual computational skills that I learned, I don't necessarily need, but I need to know how to find those things. So I need to know how to problem solve. I need to know how to use technology appropriately. So all those different things are always going to be around, even if, the actual subject matter has changed a little bit. So again, just some other pictures here of children just exploring, working together, learning how to appreciate their surroundings and learn from it. So those are just kind of some of the things that we put together and thought about whenever we're talking about STEM and nature. And what we wanted to emphasize whenever we were developing these lessons and these guides. All right. So the great thing that we want to share with you now is kind of what is new this year. So Jackie talked a little bit about how we have 2 other sets of guides that are available for download. You can still get them on our website, and we'll talk about that later. But for this year, as you all know, the topic here is oceans of possibilities. And so we kind of thought through this a little bit, and we wanted to do something, that was still in that same realm of oceans, but we kind of wanted to think about how can we make this available for childcare providers, for librarians to use, parents, grandparents, whoever, so that it was interesting, timeless, age appropriate, and all these different things. So if you want to go to the next slide here. So these are our books that we selected for this year. And we actually went to the library. I think we went to the Norfolk Library, and we had them pull like every book that had anything to do with oceans or water. So it's kind of awesome because we actually went into this room, and I don't even know how many, we should have counted how many books total, but there was like probably hundreds. And so we sat there for a day and went through all these different books. We categorized everything and then recategorized it. And so it was kind of an ordeal to get to these 8 books. But we were really excited because we wanted to kind of have a mixture. We wanted to have some books that were kind of old school. So your Rainbow Fish and your A House for Hermit Crab are kind of your older stories that most people are familiar with. But then we also wanted some newer things that providers might not have, or that you all might have as like a feature book or something like that. So these are some of the newer books that we chose for this. Jackie said she likes to use the word classics. So the 8 books that we chose, we have Pokey the Turtle Patrol, My Ocean is Blue, Rocket Says Clean Up, A House for Hermit Crab, The Sandcastle That Lola Built, The Rainbow Fish, Haywater, and The Treasure of Pirate Frank. So we'll kind of go through those individually here in just a minute. But the awesome thing that we're so excited about this year is that all of our guides are actually going to be translated into Spanish. So that is one thing that we really wanted to make sure that we did. And hopefully, I think even in the future, we'll do other languages as well. But we have some really great resources within Extension that allows us to have the guides translated into Spanish. Additionally, we will have our guides from the previous years translated as well, but that will just take a little bit longer because we wanted to get these out first. The only kind of challenge that we had is that not all of the books are translated into Spanish. So I think Rainbow Fish and I think maybe the Hermit Crab one are in Spanish, available in Spanish. If you have somebody that translates things for you and can translate a book, that's great. You can totally use that. But we do just wanted to make sure that the guides themselves were usable for anyone that speaks Spanish. At the bottom of this page also is our website, and we'll go to that in a little bit. But you can certainly write that down or go out to that as well. All right, so I just want to kind of go over the first 2 guides with you. So we have them numbered, but there's not really a specific order, so it doesn't really matter. But this is our first guide, and I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about the structure, and then we'll go into the individual guides and what some of the activities are for that. So this one is our Sandcastles guide, and it goes along with the Sandcastle That Lola Built. So this is kind of the structure of all of the guides. So they all have a different theme and a different subject, different activities and all that. But the overall structure and format is the same. And so we've kind of, I guess, adapted this over the past 3 years. We first started out with like a brochure kind of trifold document, and it was nice, but we had some feedback to say that they wanted something that was a little bit easier to print. And so now we have sort of a newsletter format where it's just a front and back, and it's a PDF, super easy to print off. You can print 2 pages or just the front and back, and it's really easy to use. So at the top, you see it says 4-H STEM reading connections. So that just is our kind of going along with our partnership with the STEM reading connections. Underneath that is the title and the author of the book, but then we also have a picture of the book. So usually that's where your eye is drawn first anyways, it's going to be that picture, but then we do have a larger font of the actual title and author. So then in the box right next to that is our conversation starters. And this, I think, for us as educators and for you all as librarians, you're very used to reading out loud to children and even to adults. So this probably, it may not even be something that you are unfamiliar with, but since we did want this to also reach providers, we wanted it to reach parents or grandparents or any of those teens that might be babysitting. These are great kind of starters to the story. And so it might be something to kind of get kids thinking about what the book might be about, or even after you read, think about what went on in that story. And so it's just a way to kind of warm up a little bit and just to give you all something to think about. So you're welcome to add to that. If you don't like some of the questions, you can not use them. It's totally up to you, but we just wanted to have it all in kind of a nice one-stop shop here. Underneath that on the first page again is the STEM connection. And this is kind of our big activity. This is the one that has the most instructions. It lists all the supplies. It's pretty detailed in what to do in this particular activity. In this case, it's all about building sandcastles using toilet paper rolls. So again, we wanted to make sure that you had access to something inexpensive. So you can have people start collecting toilet paper rolls. I always tell people it's really easy to train other people to collect them for you. So I have everyone at my work is trained to save them. I have my husband who is also trained to save them. And so, I mean, it doesn't take a whole long time to get them to do it, but put a collection basket like in the bathroom or something, and they'll just start getting toilet paper rolls. It's crazy. And then you'll end up with 1,000 of them and be like, okay, I think we're okay. We're okay for a while. But this is an activity that you can use that with. So again, like I said, it has your supplies listed there. It has kind of the directions, and then there's usually kind of a connection at the bottom, and it's different for each individual theme on each guide. So then on the back page, we have 3 additional activities that we provided. And this is also different from last year. So if you've downloaded or used the guides from last year, these are a little bit different because we added the nature and we added the infant toddler piece, because last year we had music and movement, we had creative arts, and we had sensory. And so we got some feedback about people wanting to use it with little ones that, kind of that infant toddler age. And then we also really liked the nature piece of it. And so we wanted to make that connection too. And so that goes back to that whole STEM and nature thing. So that's why we changed the top and the bottom one. So the first one is always going to be a nature activity. So something related to getting outside, going on a nature walk, something along those lines. Then the creative arts one, it just, again, is different for each one, but it's some kind of artistic. It might be writing, it might be drawing a picture, it might be some sort of, this one in this case is sand art. So it just depends on the activity for that one. And then the infant toddler one. So this one is specific to infant toddlers, but you can also tailor it up or down depending on what age you're working with. And that's the case for all of them. So even though, with the sand art, you might not do sand art with glue and all of that with an infant, but you can still have them do some sand exploration or something like that. So just depending on the age level that you're dealing with, and this may be more geared towards providers because they have such a wide range of ages, but we just want to encourage anybody that's using these to use them however, whatever works for you and whatever age you are dealing with for that particular day. So all of them will have those 3. And then on the side there, we have our background. And basically that's just kind of, how we are connected with the STEM reading connections and what that looks like. And then of course our contact information, because we want you to be able to use us as a resource as well. So these are resources for you to use, but if you have, questions, if you have suggestions, if you're looking for, another activity suggestion, or you just say, I really love this activity, but I need it to be tailored up to use with school age. How can I do that? We are more than happy to help you do that. And that is why we develop these, is so that way you could use us as a resource as well. And then we have our QR code, and that one is just, the intention of that is to actually just for providers or anybody really to give out a guide to parents, and they can just scan that and then get on the website and download the guides themselves if they want to do that. So pretty much any way that you can think of accessing these, we have given you that option. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody could get to them. All right. Okay, so I think we are just going to go straight into our guides and talk a little bit about that. So like I said before, I grew up near the ocean. I actually was born in Texas and lived kind of outside of Houston. So I was very close to Galveston. I don't know, we went to the beach all the time. I probably was swimming before I was walking. So it's very important to me. So that's why the ocean kind of part of it is meaningful to me, because I grew up in that environment. But in Nebraska, a lot of times we have kids that have never been to the ocean. It's kind of a foreign place to them because we're a landlocked state and it's not easily accessible. You know, nowadays, since, well, of course, gas prices are going up, so they may not be traveling, but in the past, traveling has been relatively inexpensive. So kids may have traveled there, but now that it's kind of getting a little bit harder to do that, we want to kind of help them to build that connection. So even though oceans are not exactly, you know, a common thing for children in this particular area, or even in the Midwest, we can make a connection with the river. And so as you see some of our guides later, some of them deal with water conservation. So it's kind of that overall general water theme. But with the ocean, we can talk a lot about how the ocean is connected, or the rivers that we have are connected to the ocean. One of the things that I like to do is actually, and Jennifer talked about this too, is about maps. So you can get out a map of the United States, or even just kind of this, you know, this corridor that we live in, basically from the Dakotas all the way down to the Gulf. And you can follow the rivers down as they connect and kind of shoot off, but they all end up down into the ocean somehow. And so we can talk a little bit about the importance of why we don't want to put garbage in our rivers, or why we want to make sure that we keep our rivers clean, because that water eventually ends up down in the ocean and can affect all of these different animals and plants that live there. So with this one, this is all about sea turtles. And if you know me at all, you know that I love sea turtles for whatever reason. It's my favorite animal. I have a sea turtle tattoo. I bought this shirt and it has a sea turtle right here. Pretty excited about it. I have sea turtle everything. So that's what people buy me for my birthday and Christmas, is sea turtle stuff, because it's very easy to please me that way. But so I was super excited to be able to talk about sea turtles in this lesson. So again, it's Pokey the Turtle Patrol, and it's this book right here. And I'm actually, well, I'll fix that in a minute. So, you know, again, we have our conversation starters, but our STEM connection activity on this one, super excited about, because I actually had to do a little bit of work on this one. Not that I don't do work anyways, but so I really wanted to, here, and I'll show you just a second. I really wanted to have life-size posters of sea turtles. You cannot find life-size posters of sea turtles. So I was insistent on doing this. So I just made them. I have one with me today, so I'll show it to you if you can see it on the screen. But there are 7 species of sea turtles that are living. There's another one that was extinct, but if you want to do this activity, I encourage you to use life-size posters, and I can print out sets of them for you if you are interested in that. I have a couple of other librarians that have requested a copy of, or a set of all these posters. So there are 7 of them. I think so, 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 7. And so they get pretty big. So this one is the leatherback, and it actually is 6 feet long, because leatherback turtles can get up to 6 feet long. So this particular activity is a measurement activity. So the life-size posters are really awesome because kids can lay down on them. You know, they're laminated, so they don't tear up as easily as just paper. but they can lay down and kind of measure themselves. They can measure the sea turtle. The smallest sea turtle is like 2.5 feet, 2 feet or something like that. So most toddlers are going to be that size, but then you have this 6-foot leatherback, and my husband is 6'4". So, you know, he could lay down. I should do that. I should make him lay down next to this turtle and see how it compares. But with the measurement, you can either use a tape measure. So I also have like a little tape measure that I use with it sometimes. So you're working on identifying numbers. You can also use other forms of measurement, like a piece of yarn. So you can have children measure themselves with yarn and just use that if they're not quite at the age where they want to use a tape measure. My 3-year-old loves tape measures, so he likes to play with these. But depending on the age that you're working with, you can decide how you want to do that measurement. With older kids, you can have them document that and write that down and do some comparisons or graphing that way too. But with the little ones that this one's geared towards, we mostly want them to just see how big a sea turtle can be. So, you know, this is our 6-foot sea turtle right here. It just keeps going. So you can see it just makes a really nice visual for children to be able to see. So like I said, if you are interested in that, I'm happy to print those off for you. They are a little, if you want them laminated, I can get them laminated. It would just be a little bit extra, but so for a set of posters is about $100 because we have a poster printer at my work. And we're able to do that and print those off for you. So if you're interested in that, you can send me an email, which is on our guides, but I'll also put it here in the chat in just a minute. But if you want more information about those, just let me know. As far as the nature activity for this one, so this one you can cut out kind of an outline of a sea turtle, and I just got an outline from Pinterest or, you know, Google or whatever, and just cut it out on cardboard. And this is from an old box. So I used the box and cut out these. And so what we want kids to do is to go outside and collect nature items and then basically make themselves a nature shell on their outline of their sea turtle. So they can do it different ways. You can put googly eyes on it if you want to. They can color the fins, or they can even put nature items on the whole thing. It doesn't really matter. So just a nature connection there. With the creative arts, this one is a clay sea turtle. Clay is pretty easy to come by. You can use Play-Doh. Some of our providers want to use Play-Doh because they have it. So that's something you can do also. Then with the infant toddler activity, this one I don't know, I'm pretty proud of this one because I couldn't find an infant toddler activity that was like fun. It was all kind of, I don't know, it was all kind of boring. So what I did is I found a lot of pictures of sea turtle tracks. So as you know, sea turtles live their life in the ocean, but then when they lay eggs, they come up onto the beach and they leave these really awesome tracks. And so what I did is I actually printed off a whole bunch of pictures of sea turtle tracks. And so I made like a little book, and it just says turtle tracks on it. And then all these pictures are just different tracks that sea turtles have left. And so I kind of did something like that. And then I have a tray that you could use, a bowl, you could use a tote, whatever you want, you know, even if it's something this size. And I put sand in it. And then the ping pong, I bought ping pong balls, and those serve as the turtle eggs, because that's pretty close to what a turtle egg looks. They don't feel that way, but that's pretty close to what a turtle egg size is. So then you can kind of use those to see if they can make the tracks with their hands. They can bury the ping pong balls, or they can just kind of have that sensory experience depending on how young of an infant toddler you're working with. So that's one of the things I did. That's pretty easy to do, pretty simple to acquire those materials. Let's see. Oh, I did want to show you this because I just got this. So this is, you know what, I'll show it during the rocket book because it kind of goes along with that too. Okay. What's the next one? Okay, so the next one is My Ocean is Blue. And for this one, this is kind of a book, and it has a little bit of like poetry in it. And so I like this one because it has a lot of nice descriptions of the ocean and that sort of thing. So The STEM connection with this is actually the layers of the ocean. And so what I did is I got a whole bunch of water bottles. You can use baby food containers, you can use jars, however you want to do it. But basically I got some bottles like this, and this one's plastic, which is nice because I didn't want to get glass really, but if you're just going to have them on display, you could have glass. So for each bottle is going to be water and some mixture of blue food coloring. And because with the layers of the ocean, we talk a little bit about what plants and animals live in all those layers. So the first one is the sunlight layer, and that's pretty much where most animals live because it's what gets the most sunlight. It's the clearest blue, if you want to say it that way. And then going down from there, you just continue to add blue food coloring. You can add ocean animal, like little plastic figurines to show what animals live in which layer. You can label the bottles so that way they know which layer is which. So you can kind of do a couple different things with that. You can even let them make the layers themselves if you want to. And on the STEM connection activity, it shows you how to do that and how many drops of blue or how many drops of green or whatever. You might have to adjust it depending on the size of your bottle. I had to with these because they are a little bit bigger. So they were thinking if you had like a jar like this size, like a jelly jar or something. So if you get bigger ones, you might just have to adjust that. These I found at Walmart for $1. So these are plastic and they're nice water bottles. So you could glue, if you're concerned, you can glue the top on and they're not going to spill out or anything like that. So that was like jackpot. So that was $1 over in the water bottle aisle, like where you would buy your reusable water bottle. The other activities with that, so the nature activity is using driftwood. So this one, you can use actual driftwood. So when I was down at the beach, I was like collecting driftwood. So I have some real driftwood. And my dad was like, what are you doing with all this stuff? I said, just don't worry about it. It's for work, whatever. So you could use real driftwood if you can find it. Sometimes they have like bags of it at Hobby Lobby or something that's clean and all that. But you can also just use sticks. I mean, so you can have kids go out and collect sticks of whatever size and basically make them into a shape of an ocean animal. So just like the sea turtle, you can find an outline of a fish, a starfish, a seahorse, a shark, whatever it may be, and just have them use that template or use that outline to place their wood in there to make their driftwood sculpture. The next activity, the creative arts activity, I really like because I kind of wanted to use a little bit of the book. So the girl in this story uses a lot of different descriptive words to describe the ocean. So she's out there in the ocean and she's describing what the water is like. She's describing the animals that she sees. And so this one, I kind of had kids think about ocean poetry. So, thinking about what words they could use to describe their favorite place. So even if they've never been to the ocean, they do have a favorite place, whether it be their yard or their bedroom or the car, I don't know. So they have a favorite place. So what words could they use to describe that place? And then, draw a picture of that place and then add a few words to talk about, to tell others what that place is like. So for smaller children, adults may need to assist with the dictation of this, but they can still kind of work on drawing a picture. Then the infant toddler activity is to talk a little bit about ocean currents. And so this one is filling a big container with cold water, just adding some ice and blue food coloring. They can put animal figurines in there, ocean animal figurines. But the lesson itself has how you do that. You're basically adding hot water with red hot water, really. You just color hot water with red food coloring. And then as you pour it in there, it kind of, the currents, you can see the currents throughout there because it's hitting the cold and kind of moving around. So it's kind of cool to talk about how currents in the ocean work. Okay, and this one is the Treasure of Pirate Frank. And this one's kind of fun just because it's different. We always think about ocean being, we have a lot about water conservation or different ocean animals, but pirates are kind of a cool, fun thing to talk about, especially with kids. So this is one of our other stories that we picked. So for the STEM connection activity, we have children engineering a boat. So it's pirate science and it's engineering. So we want them to make some sort of boat. And with this one, you can do it a lot of different ways. So one thing I did is I printed off and made myself another little book about different kinds of boats. And so like I have a fishing boat on here. I have a catamaran on here. I have a houseboat. I have a cruise ship, a kayak even. I also have a paddle boat. I think there is a pirate ship on here, a sailboat. So all different kinds of boats that I could think of, and just printed off pictures because I want children to engineer their own boat. So we can use supplies like foil. We can use, recycled water bottles and cut them. We can use blocks or Legos or something. They can use whatever supplies you have. Recyclable items make really good building tools, because if they get messed up, it's just, whatever. So that's what I want them to do in this particular activity. And then they can test it out. So if you have a bowl or a tote or something that you can put out with water and let them test out their boat. And then if it doesn't float, well, we might need to go back and re-engineer that. So that's the STEM activity that goes along with that one. The nature part of it is a mini beast hunt. So I thought about, I don't know if anyone's ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm like a movie nerd sometimes. And so they always talk about the beasts in Pirates of the Caribbean. So even though we're not necessarily looking for ocean beasts, we can go outside and look for other mini beasts. And so a mini beast would be something like an ant or a centipede or a doodlebug. Some of you might call them a pill bug or roly-poly. So those would be like a mini beast. So you can print off a scavenger hunt. I have one. I was testing out my poster printer, so I printed out a giant one, but it actually kind of is fun because then you can see it. But you can print out something like this. You can make up your own. You can have the kids make up their own. And then they would just go out and check off each item as they find it. So they might find an earthworm. The goal here is to help them to go outside and uncover things. So they can uncover or, pull up a log or a rock and see what lives underneath there. So that's why it's a mini beast. A bird or something like that, I wouldn't really consider that a mini beast because we can see it and it's right there. But we want them to kind of look closely down at the ground. You can even give them magnifying glasses or something like that if you have those available. The creative arts, this is creating your own treasure map. So they can do that however they'd like. And then the infant toddler activity is a song. And so it's going on an ocean hunt. So if you know the song, we're going on a bear hunt, we're going on an ocean hunt. And there's no set words for it. I give you some suggestions as to what you can say. But you can make up whatever you want to do. So if you want to go through the sand, if you want to be on a pirate ship, if you want to find some mermaids or something like that. So you can kind of be creative with how you do that. So that's the treasure of pirate prank. And then my last one, we have other ones, but I did 4 and Jackie did 4. So that's why we're talking about that. So this one is Rocket Says Clean Up. And this book is super fun because it's talking about, it kind of incorporates that water conservation, but it also talks about why it's important to keep our waters clean. So our STEM connection for this one is talking about water pollution. And so what children are going to be doing is actually sorting through dirty water and kind of trying to clean it up. So you could get a tote and put in trash. You could put in coffee grounds for like dirt or something like that. You can put in oil if you want to, but it does get a little bit messy. So you might want to do this one outside. And then basically their goal is to clean that out. So you might give them tools like a strainer or a spoon or something where they have to clean out that water. So even after they clean out the big pieces, so like big pieces of garbage, the water would still maybe be dirty. So how could they sift it out or how could they clean it out? So you might use a smaller strainer, or you might use a coffee filter. So just a different way of experimenting to see how clean you can get the water. And there's directions and supply suggestions for that as well. So the nature activity, this one I kind of thought it would be fun to do an actual service project. And so I was hoping that children would want or know a place that they could help clean up. So it might even be your own backyard. It doesn't have to be the ocean or a beach. If children have access to a riverfront or something like that, and they just find a little spot that they want to clean up, that's great. Just kind of think about places in your own community that you could take children and say, all right, we're going to spend 30 minutes or an hour or whatever time you have to just pick up garbage and make it look nicer. Even if you want to clean up a garden and pull weeds, I would love for kids to come over and pull weeds in my house. So even something simple like that, for them to be able to do, just to help them to appreciate nature and appreciate their environment. The creative arts activity is to create recycled art. And so you can collect a lot of different recyclable items, such as toilet paper rolls. We already talked about that, different pieces of paper, plastic bottles, whatever, and then use those items to create a sculpture or a fun design. And that's where I can show you my little turtle right here, because I found this. And this is actually, like, for real, a company, but they take old flip-flops and they make rubber animals out of it. So it's kind of fun because they cut the flip-flops so you can see the different colors. You can see, like, the bottom here that they've done. They've glued them all together. I think the seams are pretty good. So they basically glued all these together to make different animals. And so there's, like, really big ones that they've made. I think the Omaha Zoo, if I'm not mistaken, used to have a big fish, and it was sitting over, does everybody know where that big round ball on the water is that just sits there and spins? Okay, it was sitting kind of over there. And I can't remember if that was like a special exhibit or something, but they had a big fish out there, and it was made from all garbage. So it had, like, colored bottles, colored paper, it had, like, sea glass in it. And it was so cool because it was all recyclable stuff, and they had made this beautiful sculpture with it. So that's kind of the idea for the creative arts. The infant toddler is just a simple ocean animal wash tub. So you can fill a wash tub with water. You can put a little oil in there if you want. But then you can also put a bunch of ocean figurines in it and give them some toothbrushes, sponges, and stuff like that to get all that grimy stuff off with different types of soap. The company for this turtle is Ocean Soul. So Ocean, S-O-L-E. And they have oceansoulonline.com. So it's a legit company. And I think they are located, I feel like it was in Africa. Anyways, you can look it up, but they talk a lot about, there's over 3 billion people wear flip-flops in Asia, Middle East, India, and Africa. They've collected over 450 tons of trash and upcycled it into art. So that's the company. So you can even order, and this one was only $15, so it wasn't super expensive, but it'd be kind of a cool representation for that. Yeah, so that's the Rocket Says Clean Up, and I like that one too. I also did print out and laminate just a guide for different types of garbage and how long it takes those different items to decompose. So it's a good visual to have, especially for older kids. It can kind of help them understand that, hey, if I throw a plastic bottle into the water, it takes 450 years to decompose. Yikes, it's going to be there a long time. There's a diaper on here, and that one's also 450 years. So just kind of something to think about with garbage in general in our waters, and even outside in our environment. So yeah.
All right, so then I'll share a few details about some of our last storybook or our imagination guides that we created. So this one is Haywater, and what I really like about this one is it was awarded the Robert F. Siebert Award, or it's an honor book. And so what that means is it's a great kind of informational text. And so this book is all about where water is. So I think it's a great story to open up with, like, where are all the different places that you see water? You're going to think about bathtub. You're going to think about the sprinkler. You might think about the water fountain. You might think about a snowman, but it goes through water in all of its different places, but then it also talks about the different forms of water as well. So at the back of the book, it talks about the 3 different forms of water and the water cycle. And I think it's really great after you learn about those forms of water, then to go back through the book again. Okay, which ones of these would be solids? Which ones of these would be liquids? Which ones of these would be, if we're thinking about our steam or our water vapor? And so with this one, the main stem connection is where they're actually making their own water cycle in a bag. So just a baggie with, you use a Sharpie marker. So you're showing where we're going to have precipitation coming down, the collection, the evaporation, and the condensation. And so when you do this and you have your colored blue water, then you go ahead and tape it in a sunny window. And then the children are actually able to see the visual of the water cycle When I was in Target, it's been about a year ago now, they actually had baggies that had the design already on them. I think that's great, but I think part of the process is letting young children also design and create their own. Maybe they want to draw fish that are down in the bottom, but kind of to make this project their own, and they can learn about the water cycle. The other activities that go with this one is just getting out your watercolors and doing ice painting. So freezing a bunch of water, making a sculpture and using your watercolors to paint on the ice. It's also the nature play is taking tinfoil and going outside and finding a slope and creating your own river. You can have a collection bucket at the top and have a hose that's trickling down at the top. Children have a lot of fun playing in the water and seeing what things they can have float down their river. You could buy little ducks that you could put in. I even had little plastic boats that we can use as we create our own river outside. So it's just a great water play activity. The infant and toddler activity that goes with this one is, we know that painting is fun, but painting can be messy. Infants and toddlers can paint with water. And that is another way to show evaporation. So just having a bucket and some paint brushes or some sponges and letting them paint maybe on the bricks, on the sidewalk. I know at our local Kids Corner Child Care Center, they have a great picket fence, and they're always letting the kids paint on the picket fence, and sometimes they're even using sidewalk chalk. So that's just a little overview of some of the different activities that go with the book Haywater. Moving on to what Sarah's calling oldies, and I'm going to call more classics. The story Rainbow Fish. This is a really fun one because children are able to do an activity called Fast Fish. And what you're going to use is a bowl, some dish soap, and then a foam fish that you cut out, and a Q-tip. And what the children are going to discover, if you just dip your toothpick in some soap, and you have this fish floating on water in a bowl, and you put it right behind the tail, it's going to make that fish swim across the water. So it breaks that surface tension of the water. So it's a really fun activity as the fish is just floating there. And then you put that little bit of soap, and then it makes that fish swim. The one important thing to know is once that soap residue gets in there, you do have to clean it off your bowl before you can keep doing it over and over. So what I have found is the easiest is you have some sort of like a plate or a bowl, and you just put a real little amount of soap because you don't need a whole bunch. And then they use their Q-tips, so they're using a smaller amount. Then you're able to use that bowl of water for that activity more than one time. But we know with kids, they are often thinking the more the better. This is one where it's less is more, just so it can be reused over and over again. So another thing that's really simple to use, just a fish that you would cut out, and you're going to put the soap right behind the tail to watch it swim. The other activities that go with this particular lesson is where children are able to go outside and create a nature color wheel. So collecting all the different items that they can find, the different flowers that they might find, blades of grass, maybe different rocks, and then having a large color wheel and sorting all the colors according, or grouping all the items according to their color. For creative arts, we know that Rainbow Fish is all about friendship and sharing. And so in this one, we encourage young children to make their own fish out of Play-Doh, and then to provide them with a variety of different items, such as buttons or beads, or I even have some sequins in my tub. And they create their own design for their own rainbow fish. And after they've created their own rainbow fish, then everybody shares one of their scales with somebody else. So we're sharing just like the rainbow fish did to reenact that story. And then again, kind of going with that whole painting theme, we're going to infants and toddlers. We learned that we can paint mess-free using water, but we can also paint mess-free when we would take an item. So I cut out a fish out of cardstock. And if you use a baggie, this is just a sandwich size baggie or a quart size. But if you use a gallon size baggie, and what you would do is you just squirt some different colors of paint inside the bag. make sure it's zip closed, put some masking tape around the edge. And this is another great sensory activity. And it's another way that you can talk with young children and introduce them to some new words, like what new colors are we creating, and looking at the color mixing. So another way to think about rainbow fish and creating your own rainbow fish. You do have to take it out of the baggie to let it dry, but it makes a great kind of process-based art project that you could display in your library as well. The last guide that we have is a house for hermit crab. And in that particular guide, the STEM connection activity is all about discovering how hermit crabs breathe. And so you'd have two different cups. One cup would have either a coffee filter or a paper towel at the top of it with a rubber band around it. And then the other one is a cup of water. In that cup of water, what you would do with the children is you would either mix in some glitter. In this bag, you have sand or dirt. And you'd mix that together in the cup of water. And then what you would do is you'd go ahead and you'd pour that over top of your coffee filter or your paper towel. And what that does is you can see how the dirt or the glitter, the gill is actually collecting that water and then catching the oxygen as it passes through. So we let the water go through, but our glitter and our sand represent the oxygen. And so that's how hermit crabs breathe. But it's really fun to let them come up with what are the different things that they would want to mix. So I always start with just using some dirt first, and then letting them brainstorm what are some other things that we can mix in the water and try this again. So as we're practicing catching the oxygen. The other activities that go with this particular imagination guide is going outside and collecting different items in nature. So maybe you're collecting a group of pine cones, a bunch of rocks, a bunch of flowers, and then letting the children practice making spirals. So we see the spiral on the hermit crab's shell. You could use sidewalk chalk and have them place it on the item around the sidewalk chalk. You could take string outside. If you're in a sandbox or a dirt area, you could draw that swirl right inside the sand or the dirt as well. For infants and toddlers, that's an opportunity to do some printmaking. So letting them explore the textures of a variety of different shells and letting them make those impressions in some Play-Doh as well. So we're mixing kind of that sensory play of the Play-Doh and the shells together. And then they're able to see the different patterns that the shells can make. And then one of my favorite activities that goes with this particular book, and it's a little bit different when we think about creative arts. So we've been doing lots of hands-on art projects. When I think of creative arts, I also think of the value of dramatic play. And so those of you who are familiar with this story, we know the hermit crab is going through all the different months of the year, and every month he's meeting another friend and he's decorating his shell. That particular person or individual that he meets is going to come along with him and is attached to his shell. And so with this story, it's really fun because you can have young children reenact it by grabbing a simple clothes basket from the dollar store, printing out the different characters that the hermit crab meets and adding them to the hermit crab shell. So just imagine having a little 2 or 3 year old kind of crouched down on the ground, crawling across, and their little head, they're being the hermit crab, and they're playing and they're reenacting this story. One thing that I had just found, so I think to enhance it, I have some green kind of streamer-like paper, and that's like the seaweed. So I think there's lots of different things as you read through the story. What other props or supplies could we put in the dramatic play area to help to reenact the story of a house for hermit crab? I recently was working with some children at a local home child care provider, and they just had a lot of fun just pretending with the story and of course putting the different items on and off. And I use Velcro, and that seemed to work really, really well as a great way to retell the story. So that's just an overview of kind of the different activities that go along with the STEM imagination guides. what I want to do now is I want to show you where these are if you haven't already clicked out to the site yourself, and then also show you if you were interested in making a connection with your local extension office, I want to show you how you would do that as well. So like we put in the chat box, if you go to go.unl.edu/imagination, you'd be taken to this website, or you can scan the QR code that we have on the guides as well. And so you can see that the website is really straightforward. So we have a couple of trainings that are coming up for anyone who works with young children. So for other librarians, if you would like to recommend it, or to providers. And it gives you an overview here of what the STEM Imagination guides entail. And then right below, you can see the picture of all the guides. And to download them, you simply click on the red buttons. When you click on a red button, it'll ask you a few questions, and then you're taken to a folder. So even if you think, hey, I just want the story Haywater, it's going to take you to the folder with all of them. So you can download and save just the one to your file or to your computer, or you can save all of them if you would like. So you don't have to fill out that Qualtrics survey information for every single guide. Just know that once you do it once, you can collect and save as many of them as you would like to use. Then as you scroll down, you can see this little button that says Archive STEM Imagination Story Guides. So if you click there, it will open just another page, and you can see here are last year's resources. Lots of kids still love learning about animals and animal habitats, so we can continue to use these and promote them as well. And then if you scroll down again, you'll see here are the Imagine Your Story or the fairy tale guides that are being created, or that were created as well. As Sarah mentioned, our ocean ones are being translated to Spanish. So are these guides as well. And because I think about the fairy tale ones, a lot of these I consider are of classic stories. All of these are translated into Spanish. So you could get the book in Spanish, and you'll be able to provide the storybook guide or the imagination guide in Spanish as well. If I go back to our main page, as we scroll down, Jennifer did a great job talking about all the 4-H resources, and here's the button that you click to get all of those great resources as well. Once again, once you answer the questions, just go ahead and download them and save them to your computer. So the website's super straightforward. Our contact information is down at the bottom. So if you ever have any questions, be sure that you reach out to us because we'd be glad to help and brainstorm different ideas with you as well. So that's what our website looks like, but some of you might be wondering, how do I partner with my local extension office, and how do I find out who to connect with? So if you go to extension.unl.edu, we have a tab right here that's called Our People. And so if you go to the extension directory, you can see right here that you can type in your county. And so you could type in whatever county you're located in. So I'm just going to go up here because this one we know is Cedar County. And if you scroll down, you can find out who all the area educators are. So I would encourage you to, if you are looking specifically for someone to potentially partner with you with the summer reading program, to contact either an early childhood educator or a 4-H youth development educator or assistant. So those would be the two contacts that you would want to create or would want to connect with. So there, any county that you click on, you can see who those educators are, and that will give you that kind of that starting point of who you need to reach out to. Now, I can't make any promises that will say they will be able to come and do presentations at your library. So, because everybody's calendars and schedules are a little bit different, but I really do recommend that you reach out because most are willing if you can find a date and time that works. Any questions about the website or how to find your local extension contact? All right. Hearing none, then I would love just to hear from you kind of what's on your mind. You've heard about the 4 great 4-H resources. You've heard about these STEM imagination guides. What's a way that you might use these resources in your location? So feel free just to unmute or to type in the chat box. So I appreciate Stephanie. She's pretty excited to use all the resources. I can share that Kim Parsons, she is with the Schuyler Community for Kids, and I know that she is partnering with her library and Schuyler, and what they're doing is they are printing out the guides and putting together packets or like little book bags that have the guides, have the book, and then have some of the resources that families could use, and they could check out these backpacks and take them home and to engage with them. So that was something that Kim was talking about doing with her library. And I know that there's a Lincoln library last summer that did something similar. There's a library up in our area that has also made a display. And so they featured the different books on a shelf, and then they printed out the guides as well. So when patrons would check out the books, they were also able to take the guides with them when they were taking them home. Well, Sandy, I love how you share using them with homeschoolers. Yeah, that would be great. So just know there's a variety of different ways to implement them and use them. I had shared how some libraries use them with their story time. So the sky is really the limit. And just know that these resources are here for you to use and to share with the parents and everyone who visits your library as well. So we do appreciate all your time this afternoon, and feedback is really important to us. So you can see that there's a QR code at the bottom of this screen. And so we'd really love if you would maybe get out your cell phone and snap a picture of that QR code. And give us some feedback on what you're thinking or how you think you would implement this. How helpful was this presentation to you? If you don't want to scan the QR code, here's a Qualtrics link as well that you can use. But we really do appreciate any feedback that we're able to receive from you, because we can show our impact and then continue to be able to do programs like this.
Well, lots of good comments in the chat box there, Jackie. We want to thank you and all of your staff and team for developing great resources that librarians can use to engage little toddlers and children in STEM activities. And especially it ties right along with our theme of the summer for Oceans of Possibilities. So we appreciate you guys taking the time to present, and based on the comments, lots of brains are going right now. You can see the steam going.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.